Hey, creative professionals, welcome to the CreativePro podcast, where we help design professionals like you thrive by design. I'm Teresa Jackson, the CreativePro program manager. Today, I've got something really special for you. It's an enlightening conversation about AI's impact on creativity. The conversation's between two industry experts. You're probably familiar with both of them because they're both popular CreativePro speakers. We have Balliett and Mark Heaps. Both Amy and Mark will be presenting at the CreativePro Design Plus AI Summit this November 13th and 14th, and I really hope you can join us for that event. Let me give you a little background on both Amy and Mark in case you're not familiar with either of them. Amy Balliett is an industry leader in visual communication. She was the founder and CEO of Killer Visual Strategies, and then she sold that business in 2018. She now serves as the Senior Fellow of Visual Strategy for Material. Amy's also an author and a LinkedIn learning instructor, and you should really check out her most recent course titled Content Strategy in the Age of AI. Mark Heaps literally has spent his career at the intersection between tech and creativity. He's worked for Grok, Google, Duarte, Apple, and Maxim IC. His current role is Director Developer Marketing at NVIDIA, where he supports building the AI developer community. Both Mark and Amy are deeply immersed in the world of AI. They travel the globe to speak about AI at conferences. We're so fortunate to have them here and part of our community. Mark and Amy have had many conversations about AI with creative professionals like us, and I'm eager to hear what the conversation they're going to share with us is today. Before we get into that conversation, I'd like to share a few things happening in the CreativePro world. I already mentioned the Design and AI Summit, which is November 13th and 14th. Before that summit, we have a free webinar, and Amy is our guest for that webinar. That'll be September 30th. We also have the InDesign conference, December 9th and 12th. And then next year, Creative Pro Week will be in Nashville, Tennessee. Hope you can join us there. It's going to be fantastic. And that runs June 29th to July 3rd. Because you're listening to this podcast, you can save $100 on any of our Creative Pro events. The discount's easy to remember. It's podcast, all caps. So please join us for one of these events. Now, this episode is sponsored by PageProof. They're an amazing online proofing and approval tool that works with all your Creative Pro apps, like Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign and Premiere Pro. In fact, it even works for Figma projects, websites, video, PDF, emails, and more. So if you work in or with a team of people, you really owe it to yourself to get a free trial and try it out. You can learn more at pageproof.com. All right, when I asked Amy and Mark to join us for this conversation, I assumed that they knew each other. I mean, they both speak at Creative Pro events, and they know a lot about AI, and they have lots of opinions about AI, and I just assumed that they had been sharing their thoughts with each other. But it turns out they had only briefly met at a previous Creative Pro Week speaker dinner. So this is the first time that they're really meeting and in sharing their experience and knowledge with each other and with us. So we're so fortunate to have them. All right, let's bring them into the studio now and listen in on their conversation.
Well, this certainly feels like there's a joke in there somewhere about being married and my wife sticking me in a room with a bunch of other people at a party going, they seem like you, go talk to them.
Oh gosh, that's so true. I feel like that's very much the world I live in. The minute I hear somebody talk about AI or design or anything tech related, I just beeline to that conversation and want to weigh in and hear what they have to say.
Completely.
So definitely get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Except in my case, I live in Austin, Texas, where there's a pretty big tech scene. Yep. But more often than not, when I meet people, they work in construction or they're in the military. And so I get the questions about AI. You can imagine I would get like, is it taking everyone's jobs? Is it the end of the world? Is it Skynet? Are the robots taking over? Will we all be murdered? What about the billions of gallons that are used for every single prompt someone puts into Chat
Right.
GPT? Is this the energy crisis multiplied? And yeah, I think if there's one thing that's definitely true, and you've probably experienced as well, there's so much people don't know and understand that
Yes.
it's still the Wild West of AI.
Exactly. And it's funny because I live in Seattle. And so
Okay.
the people I mainly interface with are the folks building AI.
Right.
And I'll sit there and say to them, well, aren't you worried about maybe part of your job going away because you can now, use natural language to code an app instead of having to rely heavily on your code language? And the constant response I'm given is, no, my job's too important.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how I feel about that, because I do think that AI is going to replace a lot of different jobs, and we are all going to have to evolve to make sure that we can protect our worth within our organizations, but B, pivot if we need to. I heard a podcast the other day that said the best job you could train for right now is to be a plumber. And
yeah, I don't disagree.
know?
I mean, I get asked all the time because people have seen me, working at these large tech institutions and speaking on the subject. And I get calls from friends who say, hey man, I've got a teenager. I want them to have a good life. Should they really be going to school to study computer programming or comp sci or data analytics or, that kind of research? And I always tell them, I said, look, if you're asking me what the roadmap of AI looks like, yeah, I'm going to tell you that your kid should go into the trades. Your kid should go learn how to be an HVAC specialist. Your kid should go learn how to be a plumber, be a carpenter, be a roofer. These are really intensive manual labor jobs that robotics aren't great at yet. And if you think about the layers of applications between computer vision models to language intelligence that's used as sort of the core brain, what embedding models do between all these as they get into the stack, the analytical part of an environment, and I certainly see a lot of that in video with the work we're doing with physical AI and digital twinning and more, we're still very early stages from the idea that a drone could fly into your bathroom, see a leaky pipe, and go, oh yeah, let me just get on my knees and start pulling this apart, ignoring the fact that there's probably a decade of people's like medicines and things under that cabinet and the stuff that humans have to deal with contextually. Right. And so I think, if you're just saying, give me the binary of what's a safe future, sure, I'd say try not to be super involved in tech. But I will say, I haven't seen AI replace people with deep technical knowledge. I've seen it make them more efficient. I've seen it make them broaden the scope of what they're capable of doing. I know several people that are programmers that have, 25, 30-year careers, some of them fellows at Google. And they just say, yeah, what I love is I now describe, because of my knowledge, what I want to accomplish and what I want to tackle. And the AI will go about it in ways that I hadn't considered. And I can even tell it to create solutions practicing first principles. Whereas a human is often trying to find the shortest path to completion.
Yes, that's very true. And, it's interesting because I see that avenue as well, especially playing out in the creative world. I always say to people, AI is now giving you the power to be a creative director, when maybe you didn't see that yet in your career field. And when I do look at, somebody who is considering what are they going to study in college, where are they moving to in their career, while maybe diving into a technical skill like learning to code or software development might not be the right path, you definitely need to learn how to use AI.
Yes.
When I was 18 years old and, going to college, I had to download Netscape Navigator for the first time.
Roll me back.
Yeah. In fact, today is actually the anniversary of my first day of school, which happened to be 9/11. So I'm just looking at the date, realizing, so it was my first day of college in 2001. And I think about where my brain was and the plasticity of my brain and the excitement to learn everything that I possibly could. And suddenly I'm getting access to the World Wide Web for the first time.
Right.
And I had the ability, because I was so young, to see a future with the internet, to see all the different ways my career could evolve, my life could evolve based on the internet, that any teenager right now can do when it comes to AI. It's that whole concept that, when the Wright brothers, I went to Wright State University, so
Cool.
it's a good tie-in here. When the Wright brothers built the plane for the first time, built a plane, they thought there was only military use. They
Right.
could not have imagined commercial use.
Right.
And so right now, what's being built is not what is going to be our future output for AI.
Yeah.
It's going to be the tools that, the young folks who are really getting into it right now can only imagine how to monetize and how to take to the next level. So there are career opportunities. We just might not fully imagine them yet because we're deep in our careers in this more traditional mindset of, serving our community, serving clients, and building products.
Well, I think, there was a really interesting interview with Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI. I believe it was him that said, in the next 10 years, we're going to see the first solopreneur billionaire.
Yes.
And it's wild to me, but like I've worked with startups that are, developer centric startups, almost 90% engineer filled and founded, and that get to a place where they're $100 to $200 million a year in annual recognized revenue. And it's 15 people. And if you just said 20 years ago, can you build a company that generates hundreds of millions of dollars with, a dozen to 24 people, that would have been unheard of. Right. And today, when you look at accelerator programs as investors like Y Combinator, AITX, Capital Factory, all these guys, they are out there actively finding that talent because these are the people that I don't think they would ever admit they know where this is all going. Or to your point with the Wright brothers, like, is there commercial airline and shipping and all this in the future? I don't think they know, but what they have is a propensity to try things out, take the risks and fail fast. And they just have this way of looking at the world. And I think that's the one global maxim of advice that I constantly find myself coming back to, right? Like I was a big fan of your book in the way that you did visualization of data. And I remember going through your book and thinking about that. I worked at Duarte back in the day and we did lots of that. And I worked on Slideology and with the team. And so I was a big fan of that sort of content, yet I'm not in analytics. I'm not in data research. I'm not in any of, work related to metrics, yet the beauty of the design, the simplification of the story, the way of expressing information gives you a way of looking at the world critically. And so you can say, hey, I like this data, but what's the right way to present it so that it gets a point across? And I think that's what we're seeing with AI in a sense that where is your point of entry as a professional? I tell everyone today as the global maximum, you have to be able to look at the world in this very broadly informed view, because I was a photographer for a long time. I was an illustrator for a long time, but that wasn't my career per se, as much as it was the way I looked at the world. I looked at things in light. One of my favorite examples is I remember the early talk of Steve Jobs talking about when he learned typography. Now, he wasn't a designer. He was never going to be a designer. Right? He sort of saw himself as an art director in certain forums, but it taught him to look at the world in a way of qualities that were so in the minutia that it informed his approach to how you work. And I think it's the same thing today. An AI can only look at the world the way you tell it to look at the world. So as a human being, if you're a professional creative, you're coming in and realizing, wow, I might not start as a junior designer anymore. I might start as an art director or a creative director. So the work that, I went to school a little bit earlier than you, so I'm a little bit older. I remember doing my Letra sets and my mock-ups. I remember doing design work at the print house pre-computer. But all those skills went away. And so I guess that's the transition now. What happens when things go away?
Yeah, exactly. And that's such a good way to put it, because I often kind of compare the rise of AI in the field of design and the field of marketing as the same concept of the rise of computers in the field of
Yeah.
design, where, those who didn't adopt computers ended up getting left behind.
Hmm.
AI is now the tool that we all have to use in a way to find out how we're going to create the next big thing. And when you talk about the idea of trying to kind of conceptualize what's possible and look at the world
Hmm.
in that way, the new tools that are coming out give you a lot of freedom to really
Yeah.
flex those creative muscles in
Yes.
ways that, I go back to when I was running Killer, and I
Mm.
had the luck of having some utterly amazing designers at my disposal. And so we could
Mm.
do a quick swarm design on a bunch of different topics and ideas. And with AI, you can do it in minutes and
Yeah.
get on the same page with everybody and then dive in and really perfect it using your craft. And
Hmm.
so I think that there's just some really amazing opportunities with AI. When I think about entry level jobs with AI, one of the things I've been saying to people is, your entry level job might be creating automations. It might be
Yes.
understanding workflows and processes, and then sitting in a tool like N8N or now
Hmm.
Google Opal, and producing the workflows for different AI agents, building
Hmm.
agents that are going to help add efficiencies to your role. And then showing your boss how you can bring value by adding efficiencies to your role, finding areas where, if you open up the opportunity for your brain to think about bigger problems instead of a small problem of maybe organizing your to-do list for the day, an AI agent can do that for you instead.
Yeah.
Showing your boss the value you bring to the table because you're able to offload all of that busy, tedious stuff and really focus on that big picture thinking.
Yeah. It reminds me, I mean, this has been the story, since industrialization really became a thing.
Yeah.
One of the examples I often tell people is, if you go back in history and read about Detroit, the
Mhm.
automotive industry, right? Certainly Henry Ford's famous for the factory line. Um, but when we started getting into automation in the automotive industry, there was a lot of very upset unions and people who
Mhm.
were these deeply skilled crafts folks who did like the sewing and the tapestry and the seamstress jobs for the interiors. These were hand stitched leather grips on the steering wheels. Those used to be carved out of wood, beautifully polished oak and cherry. There were people that were experts at bending and forging steel.
Mhm.
These were amazingly talented, skilled people. But what happened is automation reduced the finite needs of having those individuals. But the people who apprenticed under them became the supervisors and the observers of the automation. And so when people talk about jobs going away, I often cite this example that if you look at the data, there are more people working in the automotive industry in assembly, manufacturing, creation, right? Design today than ever has been in history. But we don't have those particular roles. There are
Yep.
people that oversee those outputs, but they don't have those roles. So I think it's less of the binary of, does a job disappear? And it's more the gradient of, how does this need get fulfilled?
Mhm.
Right. And so I want to ask a question for you, because I'm sure you get hit with it, or you feel it the way that I feel it, which is, I feel for these people, just like I'm sure they did back then in Detroit. They felt like they were losing their not just their career, but their identity.
Mhm.
Right. And I do feel bad for folks that have put 20 years, 30 years of their life into becoming an expert at a very particular skill, who suddenly look at this and say, I'm done. Whereas I think you and I probably go, you're not done. You're going to fulfill a different need,
Yeah.
but you're not done if you figure out how to become that supervisor of the output, or the ideator, or the person who directs the AI. Because my favorite thing about it is, imagine always being able to pick your dream coworker, because you can
Mhm.
define what you want the AI to be like. How do you help those people move past the fear and say, hey, it's going to be different. but have you tried it? Like, how do you get people there? Because I don't think I've been very effective at that. And I do feel for them, but I do see countless people that have adapted and they're doing great.
So this is a great question. I'm going to give you a bit of a long answer
That's okay.
because I was feeling that way when,
Mm.
when Midjourney first came out.
Oh, sure.
I was intimidated. And the reason I was intimidated was for the exact same reason that I really don't like templatized design solutions.
Same.
I feel like the minute you take away the craftsmanship and really just make something so easy for anybody to do, what gets lost in there is the ability to recognize what good is. And you end up with, sure, it's easy. It doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't mean it's like a good final design. And I came up against this all the time when it came to infographics, where people would just slap an infographic together real quickly, poor data viz, so much text all over the page that it was not information visualized. And it would drive me nuts. But it sets such a low bar that you end up, if you are somebody providing that service, kind of having to educate your clients on the fact that just because you're seeing this low bar everywhere, just because you're seeing, really bad AI imagery everywhere, doesn't mean it works. It doesn't mean it works. It's everywhere. It's pervasive, but it's not successful. And so I was originally very intimidated / just annoyed with it because I immediately thought that that's where we were going to go. And we have gone that way a little bit, but realistically, the general audience is pretty sophisticated and can recognize if something's been made in AI, and they still want you to take the time to earn their attention. And so I ended up having a lot of designers who I respect a ton start to show me how AI became their go-to solution to cut through the noise. Instead of it being something that created more noise, they said, well, look at all the efficiencies I can add. I can do a mood board in minutes instead of days. I can get on the same page with a client just by throwing a few prompts in before we go down the wrong rabbit hole. So my clients are much happier now. I'm no longer stuck doing the tedious tasks of, just day after day slideware. And so the more I started to learn how AI could be used to benefit those who do have the big picture thinking, benefit those who are really good at communicating their vision, because now you have to communicate it to a machine through text instead of just picking up a Wacom tablet and
prompt engineering is a totally different skill.
Exactly. But I basically started to realize that the way to pitch it to people, the way to talk to people about it, is to discuss what are the tedious tasks that you wish you didn't have to do every day. The redundancies of design, or the extremely annoying aspects of scope creep. This gives us a tool to protect around all of those. And that's just in the design standpoint. I also look at how freeing AI can be for project managers. And that's a whole other world where when you're managing a creative project, there's so many nuances that you have to work through with clients as well as designers, and being that interface, that if you can take away some of the misunderstandings or some of the kind of gray area and make things more black and white for everybody involved, why not do it? Then maybe you're not waking up at 3 a.m. with a to-do list in your head because your AI agent is doing that for you instead. So I usually end with, you'll sleep better.
Oh, that's interesting. I think the efficiency approach is a really key one to the narrative. Like, how much more can you do? The part that you said that really resonated with me, when you think about the future of the role of a creative, I think you hit the nail on the head when saying AI doesn't know what good looks like, if I was paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And so you get to decide what good looks like. And because AI is trained based on massive data sets that are samples of art and illustration and music and all and prose and write all of it. And, for people who think that it is literally just printing segments from that training data, it's not, right? That's not how it works.
Right.
But it is referencing that in the same way that we reference all the education and experience that we have. The difference is AI is predominantly, whether you're talking about neural networks or transformer models, diffusion models, etc., at its core, it's using probability. And it's based on the training. It's going to say probabilistically what is good based on the volume of training data that I've received. And so we now get to decide what good is. And I'm like you, I'm deeply offended by like patterned templatization of things. I get it with a brand. You have to create a system within a brand, but you can be novel within that brand. So in my personal work, outside of my current role at NVIDIA and other places, I have friends that have businesses. I have friends that have bands. I have friends, right? So I've done design work for my friend's restaurant. Every piece of typography in that place, 100% of it is handwritten.
Nice.
Everything I've done from the logo to the menu, we actually had all of his staff. So they felt psychologically and emotionally invested in the business. I had them all write out keywords that are common from orders to the way they talk to each other and more. We wrote it on paper. I shot pictures of it with my phone. I scanned that. I built alphabets out of it. And I'm still working digitally. I'm still laying out those assets, but I wanted it to look like AI and technology wasn't defining the foundation of good.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people that are professional designers that would look at that work and go, this is crap. And I kind of feel in a kinship to Stefan Sagmeister when he went rogue and did a lot of this very abstract letter work and typography, painting on his body, carving his body in some of the history. Because he was so sick of the rigid architectural nature of what was going on in design at that time, right? He wanted more expressionism. And I feel like there's an opportunity for the creative today to do something that, coming back to the word, AI probably would never suggest.
Yeah.
And I think this is the opportunity for people to add value. What would you do? So even now, like when I do work on audio, right, and working with bands and musicians and more, because I run the gamut, I now take song ideas and I put them into like Sonos and other AI generators. And I go, what's it going to come up with by default? And I'll hear that in the first 15 minutes. And I will turn to everyone on the project and go, as long as we don't make that, we're on a better path.
I agree. I think, and I think that's a huge opportunity. And I've heard so many theories out there where AI is going to move us back into a more physical space as a people. And I really think it is.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that there's definitely some very nihilistic views of where AI can take us. The movie Mountaintop, if you haven't seen it, is the movie to show you where AI can take us.
Yeah.
And realistically, we are going to have challenges as a culture and as a species dealing with AI. But humans crave human connection. We crave human expression.
Yep.
We're not going to let AI take that from us. Instead, AI is going to kick us in different directions to explore different ways to create. And there's the concept of creating things entirely out of AI. But then there's also this concept of saying, how can I use AI to create something that is very clearly AI, but something nobody's done before? And as an example, there's an Instagram account. I don't know the name because I actually am so bad. I don't use Instagram. But I came across this in just an AI tutorial. There's an Instagram account out there right now that is creating personified AI food.
Oh, okay.
So like, let's say a French fry container with French fries in it and a whole face on it eating itself.
Oh, yeah.
Getting fed French fries, or a marshmallow getting fed marshmallows.
Right.
And I'm sorry, it's hysterical. And somebody came up with it and gets an average of 1 million views per post after only being up for a few months. And so there's these opportunities to say, how can I make something that is my own expression of creativity, something I think is funny, something I think is poignant, what have you, and make it so clearly AI that it's taking this new method of creation and actually creating real art with it, because you're bringing this perspective that nobody else has brought to it. And I think there's a lot of opportunities like that with AI, and I wish I could come up with one.
Yeah, these are sort of the meta instances, right?
Yeah.
Where people are turning AI onto itself.
Yes.
And then you've got this next generation that is, one, exactly as you said, trying to get human connection. I actually looked at the data. I've got a friend of mine that works for a very large ticketing company that books concerts and talent. And I said, how's the industry doing? And he's pretty high up in their organization. And he said, record-breaking ticket sales for big concerts and festivals. He says, we've never seen so many people trying to get together en masse so quickly. All of these mega concerts are selling out in record time. And even though the prices are going through the roof, because they want to be around other people.
Exactly.
Right. And so now it's interesting. I have 2 teenagers, and both of my kids have been raised around tech. My kids were touring the Google campus when I was working on AI there as a part of the book scanning project when they were little. So they've always been around it. Both of my kids only see AI as a tool. They can't stand it in their lives. They don't want it in their lives. They don't want to play games with it. They don't want to interact with it. They don't want to have a companion or a friend. They don't want to, have it for therapy, because they know, even though it could be well-informed, it's not authentic.
Right.
However, both of my kids absolutely use AI to tutor them for their homework, to help them understand the context of certain situations. And when it's something really awkward and they don't feel like talking to an adult about it, they'll talk to AI about it because it gives them a perspective. But in their world, it's a tool. And I think that's the area for the next generation. They're like, this is just a tool, man. And I see designers that are very young seeing it that same way. They're like, this is a creative tool. But that younger generation is getting more involved in craft. My son and I go to classes at Woodcraft in North Austin, and like learning to make furniture and stuff like that. He just signed up his elective this year. He signed up to take construction. Turns out construction is just the new name for wood shop. He was very excited. He messaged me the other day after school. He goes, I got certified in bandsaw. And he was ecstatic that he gets to use the bandsaw. And I'm having fears about losing fingers. But they want those experiences. They want to build their own stuff. My daughter asks me all the time, how does that work? And very often I don't have the answer. And I'll say, why don't we ask AI? And her usual default is, why don't we ask YouTube first? Because of YouTube Learning and YouTube University. Right? So I do think we, as this generation, probably like our parents' generation felt about the shift to the internet, I think we're the generation that's feeling the shift of AI, where we went from search engines to answer engines.
Yeah.
But for the next generation, it's an ubiquitous tool that's ever present.
I think that's really right. Now, when you say when we went from search engines to answer engines, I started my career primarily doing SEO. And now we're in a world of AIO.
Yep.
And so I look at that and I say, holy cow, years of understanding Google's algorithm, understanding how to optimize a website to rank number 1.
Yep.
And now we're in an entire shift where nobody's even clicking into websites anymore, because you have the AI search results right at the top. I don't need to click into a website. I just read those results and it tells me everything I need. And so I look at the career of SEO and I do think to myself, thank goodness I shifted out of that career and didn't make that my lifetime career.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I have friends who have been, doing SEO for 20 years that are so excited about AIO because they're saying, oh, thank goodness, a new challenge.
Yeah,
They're
that's right.
bored of SEO. They're bored of the, just doing the same formulas over and over and over again.
Gaming the system,
Exactly.
right? And figuring out all of the hacks, the way SEOs work for years of figure out the way to get ranked. Then Google changes the way that you can get ranked and they penalize you for doing certain tricks. And then all of a sudden you figure out how to regame it. And it's been a chess match.
Yes.
And it's funny. I asked my daughter once to Google something. She's 16, but I think she was 14 at the time. And she goes, Google. I go, what's with the attitude? And I was like, by the way, some of our closest family friends work at Google. And she said, all Google does is give you a chore. She goes, you search something and then it recommends where to go do the work. And I was like, yeah, we used to call that a library. And she goes, yeah, whatever. But like Google just makes me go to other people's sites and it doesn't even tell me the best one. So I have to search all these sites, whereas an answer engine just answers the question. And I'm seeing a lot of marketing organizations really struggle with this because a lot of marketing organizations have measured their KPIs on what I consider often vanity metrics, how many visits, how many views, surface engagement metrics, right? Time on page, etc. And they're like, oh, it's all going away. And I'm like, well, it's not. The agents, and Google released their report several months ago saying that 42% of search results generated by Google now come from agents. And so what's happening is we're nearly at the tipping point where your work on a website is to actually make it a knowledge-based repo.
Yes.
So the agents can find it.
Exactly.
And so for anybody that's going to watch this event, I'm just going to get very tactical and granular for a second. If you're working with your marketing group, you're working with your web designers, and they don't understand what LLMs.txt and robots.txt is, you're behind. When I first started working on AIO, someone showed me their LLMs text and robots text file, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is so close, but it was massive.
Yeah.
And they'd followed all of the markdown language. They followed all the steps to do it correctly. The agents are going to find this. And I remember asking them first question, what's the most average size model that actually is used as an agent? It's usually less than a 7 dB parameter model, right? Like a llama or similar. And the context length of those is usually 32K to 128K, which means that's how many tokens it can have at any one time in a single shot. And I looked at this file and I copied and pasted it and I put it into like a token evaluation and it was like 1 million tokens. And they were trying to boil the ocean. They put all the content in there. And I said, great. Do you know what your agent does? It's going to look at the first 32,000 tokens of that file and ignore everything else.
Yep.
So you have to now learn how to spread that over your site. And there has to be redirects for the agent. And this is what makes it fun. Because now you have to think differently because you have a completely different audience. You now have, as a creative or a professional, a synthetic audience. And it's a completely new landscape. And I love stuff like this because to me, this is the professional video game.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to put it. And it's funny because as you're doing that, I was saying that I was flashing back to creating robots.txt files and dealing with spiders and planning spider crawl. Because it also used to be something where, Google would crawl your website like once every 3 months or something like that. So clearly I left SEO in 2010.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right.
A lot changed since then.
Yeah.
There is a question though in all of that, which I know people ask often because, you and I are clearly two people who are very excited about the power that AI can put in our hands, the capabilities. But of course you have plenty of naysayers out there who will say, why do I need to be creating anything for synthetic minds? Why do I need to be catering to agents? And I'm curious, how do you respond to somebody like that? A situation where it feels almost like a moral dilemma.
Yeah. And I think it's hard. I can feel David Blattner in the room in spirit. It's hard to debate and argue the threat or appeal of moral values, right? But one of the things that I often try to remind people of is AI doesn't like you or dislike you. It has no emotions about you. There is no moral component. There's no risk of you using it. There's no risk of you being mean to it. There's no risk, right, in that respect. But if you just feel like it's the wrong way to work, right, it's just against your code of conduct, I think you really have to ask yourself, how do you want to exist in the world? And there is a way that the world is going to get its information, which has changed every decade, right? Going back from the scrolls to the website, it changes constantly, and it's changing faster than ever. People are still getting comfortable with AI. I'm at a place where I'm criticizing people for using RAG and they don't even know what it is yet. I'm like, oh, go use MCP, go use this. And they're like, but I just heard about this RAG thing. And it's going to be hard for people to keep up. But the question is how do you want to exist in the world? And this is going to seem a little strange, but I actually look to the senior citizens of today, right? I'm getting up there. I'm looking forward to retirement years coming. And I look at the senior citizens of today and I see the ones who are really proficient at using the internet.
Yeah.
But it's not about them using the internet. I see how easily they use mobile apps to get their medical practitioner appointments and their billing. They're using telehealth over video chat. They're so comfortable. They flow in their retirement and in the way they exist in the world. I want to be like that. I don't want my life to be more strained and more stressful as I get older. And that means I have to figure out what are the pathways and the tools that allow me to exist in the world that way. Just like I'm sure some people didn't want to stop riding horses versus driving cars. But there's a point where that becomes harder for you in your life to maintain that code, right? And so certainly everyone's welcome to do it. But I think if you want your life to be a little less frictioned, whether it was AI or not, at the global maximum, at the 40,000 foot view, how do I get to flow in the world, right? And I think we're going to see that AI is the next leap. We're very pre-quantum. So we've probably got 20 to 30 more years where this evolution of AI is going to continue. And I'm fascinated by what that looks like. One scenario maybe in closing here is I think people are just now getting comfortable with chat, right? And using something like Perplexity, and I ask a question, I get an answer. Great. What I'm fascinated by, and I've been working on for the last 2.5 years, is self-learning, recursive learning in AI that builds its own tools.
Yes.
So I've worked on programs where an agent is going to run into a problem, but you give that agent access to another agent who's a tool builder.
Yep. Exactly.
So when you say, hey, to get through this block challenge, you need to write a complementary hex color value of the root color that is sampled. Now, the first agent can't do that. But if you have the second agent as a tool builder say, oh, you need a tool that evaluates color values and understands complementary color. Okay, let me build that program real quick. And it will build it. It will solve the problem. It will get through the task and move on. And that piece of software that it wrote disappears. It's not stored on a hard drive. It's not like Photoshop or InDesign existing on your laptop. It was made in a temporary cache moment and it's gone.
Yep.
So we're moving to a world where it's not just what is the software, but it's what is the flow. AI will make things it needs in the instant that it needs it and then discard it as fast as it created it based on how it serves you.
Yes.
So I guess that's my prediction of what people could start to see in the future. What's your sort of outlook in the next 5 years for the audience? What do you see that you think is going to matter?
So I think that the AI evolution is much faster than 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see drastic changes in the next 10 years.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
I mean, AGI is already on the horizon. You know,
Mhm.
some will say they've already accomplished it. And then super general intelligence, I think we're 2
Mhm.
years, maybe 3 years from.
Mhm.
Um, and so given that, I definitely see our roles
Mhm.
as almost puppeteers,
Yep.
doing exactly what you said. It's going to be our job to see the big picture and then
Mhm.
to break that big picture down into steps and identify what agent does what step and how those
Mhm.
agents work together. The tools are available at our disposal to start doing that right now.
Mhm.
And if anybody wants to like jump in and learn, N8N, in my opinion, is the tool to be learning right now to build workflows
Interesting.
and agents. Although Opal might be destroying N8N at the moment because it's so much easier to use.
Mhm.
But the outputs of Opal aren't as good.
Mhm.
So with N8N, at least you can go grab from all the different AI tools out there versus
Yes.
being just in Google's ecosystem.
Yep.
Um, so that's one aspect. But the other thing I see is what AI is enabling us as a people to shift towards in how we interact with each other and how we
Mm.
take in information and content. I
Mhm.
think we're moving to a almost screenless world, a
Yes.
world where we're not interacting with our computer screens anymore. We've got our,
Yes.
you know, Warby Parker smart glasses on or something like that.
Yep.
Um, and suddenly that's going to shift the entire world of UX UI design. It's going to shift the entire world of visual communication
Yep.
and how we go about connecting. Augmented reality, we've been talking about it for I don't know how many years,
Yeah.
saying, oh, it's around the corner, but it truly is
It
going
really
to
is.
be the world we live in. Um, and so I think that when I say there's going to be a lot of drastic changes, I think in the next 10 years, we're going to see how much we can elevate the human brain
Mm.
by providing us with the tools and features, with wearables, with all the different aspects of growing our knowledge and growing our capabilities through knowing how to orchestrate that knowledge.
I completely agree with this. In fact, I've written probably 7 articles about this now. Something that I call LUI,
Nice.
which is language user interfaces, and I worked on it with a number of
Uh-huh.
engineers from different organizations. And if you look at the rapid ubiquity of language models, I
Mhm.
tell everybody when we look at language models, we think of languages like text, but
Mhm.
art is a language. Dance is a
Yes.
language. Music is a language. Anything that can have pattern and breaks of pattern is a form of language. Code is a language. Math is a language, right? So you can now take that concept and say, well, if I have a wearable that is looking at my heart rate and my blood pressure, and at the same time, there's a CV model that is looking at the vectors of my face and evaluating my expression, which is a completely different agent, a completely different model. And the words
Mhm.
coming out of my mouth are being fed into another agent, which is the prompt. But as it appends the prompt by saying, hey, what's my calendar look like for Friday? Because I want to meet someone at 5. If the appendage of that prompt is your heart rate was this and your expression was this, it's going to say, and they appear to be stressed about this request, and there appears to be something else going on. It's going to take that into context to define what the answer and response should be. And
Mhm.
that's where I think Louis are this fascinating concept where we know we have wearables today. People have iWatches, et cetera. We know we've got like, what's the other one? Livable or whatever it is, which is the little badge people wear.
Mhm.
And it's transcribing your life constantly for context, to be able to respond to you. These are really interesting ideas, but none of them are chatting with each other, the Aura Ring, et cetera. They're not,
Exactly.
they're not one mixture of experts
Mhm.
in your solution. And so I think that is literally the next 2 to 5 years focus. I believe Apple's already working on some of this. I can't
Yeah.
confirm that, but I believe strongly it is. And I believe that means the behavior psychologist is closer to a UX person than a design thinking person is.
Yes. I agree with you entirely. It it's a bold new world we're entering. I I appreciate that when I was 18 and downloading Netscape Navigator for the first time, I didn't know where the world was going. And I could just innocently experiment.
Yeah.
And now I feel so grateful to have 40 plus years of history behind me, to be able to look at this next inflection point of technology, society, and culture and understand what is possible, and also understand that I also don't entirely know what's possible, and appreciate both of those at the same time.
Yep.
I feel like I'm very grateful to be the age I am right now with the history I have right now in this moment, because I don't think I would have respected it or understood it the same way as my 18-year-old mind took to the internet.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. I think that's a really positive message, and I'll build on that because I ended up in Silicon Valley after calling my older brother, who was a mechanic in Silicon Valley, and I said, at 18, what should I do next? And he said, well, there's these guys out here working on this thing called the internet. Maybe you should come out here. And so that's how I ended up in Silicon Valley, was just hearing this almost trailblazer vision of like, just be the early explorer, go discover things. And I find that's the journey right now with AI for me personally, right? I have a career as a graphic designer. I have a career as a photographer. I've had a career of many titles, but what's at the soul of every one of those titles is I was an explorer and a creator. And you aren't going to break AI as a user. There's not a risk of you burning the hard drive out, right? In the way that it was when we were doing all night renders in After Effects and Premiere 20 years ago.
Gosh, yes.
And certainly I burned up several computers.
Oh, I burned up several computers too in rendering.
Yep. And so I tell people like, hey, you mentioned Google. Jump in Firebase. It's great. Code something, build a little. I've made 3 plugins for Adobe Illustrator just talking to AI. And they're really useful. I use them all the time. Lovable, great. Bolt, RC Concepcion, Replit is amazing. Streamlit is amazing. Vercel, V0 is amazing. There are all these tools out there that are not part of your industry normative toolboxes. And I will say, this is something I'm excited about with Adobe, who did not ask me to say this, but when they made the decision in this last year to start offering other models beyond Firefly in their applications, they recognized that the professional creative wants to explore in that way. And so they just added Nano Banana to it, right? Which is this amazing model from Google.
That's what Teresa was saying earlier. Nano Banana could have killed Photoshop. It could have. And instead they added.
They added it, which was brilliant, which is absolutely brilliant, right? But what we see is when people ask me, what's the best model? And I go, whatever I tell you, it won't be in 2 months.
Exactly.
So just keep playing, keep exploring, and just recognize you're not going to break it.
I love it. I think that's a great spot to close out this conversation, because I'm right there with you and agree.
Awesome. Well, this has been super fun. As always, I am a big fan of your work, and I look forward to whatever it is that I get to see you do next. And to the CreativePro audience, I'm glad that I get to be back talking to everybody again, and look forward to the next time we all get together.
Thank you so much. I too am a big fan. I'm really excited for hopefully we meet up at a CreativePro week, in Tennessee in 2026.
Not that far from Austin, Texas. I might ride my motorcycle there again. I did that for a CreativePro once before in Georgia, so I might have to make the road trip.
Hey, Austin and Asheville sounds like a good one.
Totally. All right. Thanks so much, Amy.
Thank you.